Hey folks, this is Kalani. There have been some massive changes to leveling in the latest Dragonflight beta build, so much so that leveling from 1 to 60 could be twice as fast or even faster. The main change comes to the amount of experience required to level, which has been changed a few times on the alpha and beta already, and these latest numbers are a significant reduction in overall experience required, which means faster leveling. There are also some rumours about a potential stat squish coming in Dragonflight, which we haven't heard anything about so far, so let's break down exactly what has changed, what this means for leveling in the future, and talk a bit about why these changes are being made. Before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. The main reason people are talking about big leveling changes right now is that Blizzard just pushed another massive nerf to the required experience to level from 1 to 60. All in all, it looks like the overall experience needed has been reduced by about 60%, which is actually kind of insane. That would mean getting from 1 to 60 in Dragonflight will take about half the time that it does right now in Shadowlands, which is going to be great if you want to quickly level up some alts after the Dragonflight expansion starts. To put these numbers into perspective, I've got a fancy little line chart here. So on this graph, the current required experience to level is marked as the 0% line. That's how much XP is needed to level in Shadowlands from 1 to 60. So if the yellow line goes above that 0% marker, that means that leveling will be slower, and if the line goes below that marker, that means leveling will be faster. So as you can see, it's not just as simple as everything is faster, it actually fluctuates quite a bit. Getting to level 10 is going to be quite a bit faster than previously, but from levels 10 to about 30, leveling will actually slow down quite a bit. This might be intended to give you more time to play around with new abilities and key talent points. Remember that as we level in Dragonflight, we will earn talent points in both the class tree and the specialization trees, so zooming you through these early talents might be a bit too much for newer players especially. But at around level 31, 32, things start to speed up dramatically, and it just keeps going until about level 50, where there's about a 75% reduction in overall experience required to level, and it stays there until you hit level 60. So the first leg of your journey is actually going to be a bit slower, and then you're going to zoom from 30 to 60 comparatively. I actually think this is a good change overall, and the experience reductions are in the right place. I always felt like getting up to that level 30 mark was quite quick. You'd get multiple levels per dungeon or clear out quest hubs with a decent pace, but then things start to slow down very quickly. Running multiple dungeons per level, clearing entire zones for a few dings, the pacing changed quite a lot. So with these experience nerfs in place, not only will you level faster overall, but I think the pace is going to be a lot smoother too. There aren't going to be those massive gaps between level ups, which also means there won't be huge gaps between earning your new talent points. For existing or veteran players, these changes really only mean one thing: faster leveling for your alts. But I think these changes will impact newer players more significantly, and I really do think the new player experience needed some adjusting. The largest change for players coming into the game for the first time in Dragonflight is going to be those talent trees. Whereas previously you would level up, you'd earn some random new abilities at specific levels and earn passives that augment and improve those abilities, all of that is now tied into the talent trees instead. So you don't really gain anything passively now, you have to pick the talents in the trees. So making that experience smoother should be of utmost importance if the dev team wants to retain new players that come into the game for Dragonflight. I think evening out the leveling experience up to 60 is a great way to ease players into the game, and making sure there aren't long gaps between earning your talent points keeps things interesting and exciting, as that's where the main focus is going to be for any leveling character. Now it's worth noting that this has actually happened once already. In an earlier build, the experience requirements for the same level bracket, 1 to 60, were reduced by about the same amounts actually, but then very shortly afterwards the experience requirements were changed yet again to be far more conservative of a reduction, and they actually increased in some key areas. On this chart, the 0% is the same thing. It's the required experience for us in Shadowlands as of right now to go from level 1 to 60. So that's the current experience requirements. The blue line is the first round of experience changes and nerfs, and then the red line is the second change. So you can see from level 1 to 10 it was about the same, and then less experience required for about 10 to 30, which is the opposite of the other changes, and then for 30 to 50 the experience was reduced but by less than the blue line, and then for 50 to 60 experience actually stayed the same or increased slightly compared to what we have in Shadowlands. So if the red line had gone through, we would have seen faster leveling overall, but nowhere near as fast as the newer experience nerfs. If I then overlay the newest round of experience changes onto this graph with the yellow line, you can see it follows the blue line quite closely. There are some slight adjustments here and there, but for the most part we're just seeing that massive reduction in experience once again. So here's the question: if they've done it once before but reverted it, is there any reason to believe this new change will actually stick? I think there is. For starters, we are incredibly close to this thing going live. Experience changes, and leveling changes in general, have typically been applied with the pre-patch, not with the expansion itself. That should mean that we will see these massive leveling experience nerfs come through during the pre-patch for Dragonflight, which will give us a bit of time to speed level alts in preparation for the expansion launch. So if you've been putting off leveling some alts, it might actually be worth waiting a bit longer for these nerfs to go through. My main point here, though, is that the pre-patch is right around the corner. It's already been pushed to the public test realms, and they usually aren't tested for very long, just over a month for the most part, which means that the pre-patch could be just over a month away. Folks are already slapping down dates like October 18th or October 25th, and if you remember to just a little while ago, there was a leaked internal document that said the pre-patch was planned for October 25th. Now obviously these leaks aren't always true, but with the current timeline, with PTR testing already underway, and with the expansion still slated for this year, they seem very confident with that. October 25th is looking pretty likely for a pre-patch date. If these experience changes are not intended, but they're being applied this close to the pre-patch release date, you have to question why that could be. Surely there's no large benefit from adjusting experience rates for testing purposes this close to pre-patch, which leads me to believe that they are probably intended. As another interesting tidbit of information, with these changes in place, the introduction experience for the Evoker Dracthea race class combo coming in Dragonflight will get them all the way up to level 60, something you would expect from the intro quests for a new race or class. That's pretty much how they've worked ever since Death Knights. The starter zone or questing experience gets you to a high enough level to start the next round of content. For Death Knights, that was going straight into Burning Crusade leveling. For Demon Hunters, it was to get a high enough level to hop straight into Legion content, and then for the Dracthea, you would expect them to get up to level 60 at least. So it's interesting to note that when the experience nerfs were reverted to the red line we were just talking about, Dracthea would only get to level 59 through their intro experience. It's anecdotal at best, but I do think it's an interesting observation. If the nerfs are intended and they stick around, Dracthea will get up to level 60 before they finish their starting area, which means they can hop straight into Shadowlands endgame content during the pre-patch, and then straight into Dragonflight stuff when the expansion goes live. That sounds like a much smoother experience overall. I guess the last question here then is, why such massive nerfs? Why speed up leveling this much for the 1 to 60 portion of the game? And I actually think it's pretty clear. Going forward, the dev team are maintaining the distinct separation between the current expansion and older expansions. For Shadowlands, this was done quite elegantly with Chromie Time. With Chromie Time, you can level in any expansion and follow any storyline from level 10 up to level 50. You can go all the way through TBC, or Wrath, or Caddo, whatever you want. You don't have to go through each expansion in turn like the old days. It's much smoother and makes way more sense, and it just makes leveling more interesting. It was also a fantastic change for newer players especially, but the big question with Chromie Time was always what happens after Shadowlands, and now we know. Chromie Time gets updated and brought forward to maintain the gap between old expansions and new expansions. With the release of Dragonflight, Shadowlands becomes an old expansion, so it gets added into the Chromie Time feature. Our level cap was changed, so Chromie Time also gets updated to reflect that as well, meaning that after the pre-patch goes live, all Chromie Time questing works up until level 60 instead of just level 50, and then the Shadowlands leveling experience is added as a Chromie Time option, so you can level through Shadowlands from 10 to 60. This means you can skip over Shadowlands entirely on future alts, but it also means that you can do just Shadowlands if that's what you desire. The flexible leveling path continues up until the next expansion, which will now be Dragonflight, which requires level 60 to proceed into. And I think this ties in perfectly with these experience nerfs, because the dev team might be trying to keep the old expansion portion of the game the same size, or at least take about the same amount of time to get through. So with the experience nerfs in place, you can go from level 1 to 60 in about the same time, or even faster than the previous Chromie Time experience of 1 to 50. So this should all be about getting players or characters caught up to the new expansion within an ideal time frame, and I do think that's a good idea. As expansion upon expansion was added in the past, it became an incredibly limiting hurdle to get a character leveled up enough so you can actually join in with the fun stuff in the new expansion and at endgame. Chromie time was a great fix for that, so I'm glad they're updating it in a way that keeps it relevant, but also keeps it up to date with the current state of the game. But ultimately, these are still beta changes. Until they're locked in, they could change time and time again, but I think there's a good argument to be made for this latest round of changes sticking around and being the intended leveling experience as we look forward to Dragonflight's pre-patch and eventual release date. Now, there is another change that is relevant to this topic happening in Dragonflight. You may have heard recently that the dev team are doing another stat squish. A lot of folks on the beta have noticed that certain stat weightings on items have gone down considerably, leaving characters feeling very weak while leveling especially. According to a recent blue post, this is actually unintended. They are not doing a proper stat squish like we've seen in the past, which is a good thing in my opinion, because I don't think it's really needed right now for numbers wise. We're not really getting to huge numbers, and stat squishes have always caused massive problems when it comes to scaling and old expansion content. So if this isn't a stat squish, what's going on? Well, it's actually kinda cool. The dev team are completely rescaling the entire item level progression from 1 to 60, with the old Chromie time stopping at level 50. The item level progression from 1 to 50 kinda covered what you would expect. It gets you ready to start Shadowlands early leveling. But with Shadowlands being the most recent expansion, the item level gains from level 50 to the end of level 60 are insane in comparison. Power creep has always been a problem in WoW, which is why the start of an expansion usually rewards very high item level gear from starter quests to reset the balance and the baseline for the next expansion, so the item level progression will make sense again. But now that Chromie time will go all the way up to level 60, how exactly do you balance that out? Well, Blizzard's answer seems to be literally just to balance it out. Wowhead has a good chart showing how this could work out. Instead of item levels being low until 50 and then spiking up on the way to 60, they're just going to spread the entire item level progression over levels 1 to 60 instead. So technically you should see higher item level rewards from all sources while leveling up until that level 60 mark, until level 60 where you hit the same item level as where we would have gotten previously. So while it looks like we have an unexplained stat squish on the Dragonflight beta, it's actually this item level scaling change coming through. It's just not complete yet, once again proving that we are still in beta and things have a lot of fine tuning before the game is ready to go live. But what do you think of these huge experience requirement nerfs and then popping back up on the Dragonflight beta? Do you think leveling should be faster or maybe slower than what it currently is in Shadowlands? How do you think leveling should be paced now that we have massive talent trees to progress through again? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who's subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I'll see you next time.